I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to a new series of contemplative outreach with Father Thomas Keating. The title is A Gift of Life, Death and Dying, Life and Living. Now, it's been very interesting that even in the choosing of this title, this whole series that we worked on for these 2 years had an energy to it. We first started out by saying, Death and Dying and the Unknowable God. And the more we watched the 9 hours, we realized, well, that's not pretty good. We need a better title. So it was Death and Dying, Life and Living. And after we looked at the 9 hours again, we said, well, that's not quite right. It's really about life. And so the series is entitled, The Gift of Life, Death and Dying, Life and Living. Now, when people heard that we were going to do a series like this with Father Thomas, they kind of said, what more can be said? Because so much has been said about the whole experience of death and dying. And yet Father Thomas, in his wonderful wisdom and in the questioning answers that went on, came up with what I feel in my heart is a change of attitude, a change of disposition, trying to get into our minds, even more important, our hearts, as to what this is all about when we talk about death and dying. And from my perspective, I like to say that the series is a gift in doing the work of putting and helping us put on the mind of Christ. To see death and dying through the eyes, hear it through the ears of Christ in a special way. Now, I did the interviewing. You'll be blessed. You won't be seeing me. I was off camera. And conversations went on throughout the 4 days that we were filming at Snowmass at the monastery. You'll only hear me when it's appropriate, where the question helps clarify something that Thomas may be answering. And most of that is at the end of the series itself. He'll be talking directly to you. It's a personal conversation with you. And I feel that you will sense that as you experience the series. Now, throughout the series, one thing became very important and even stressed more than we had thought at the beginning. Centering prayer is a preparation for death. Let me pause a moment here and read to you directly Thomas's words about this. I find they're very powerful. Centering prayer, when it reaches the full consent, because remember, centering prayer is a prayer of consent. When it reaches the full consent to our nothingness, which means we realize we're not the center of the world and God is the source of our being, is a perfect preparation for death, because it is death to the false self. Now, the false self for us is that attitude and disposition of life where one sees themselves as separated from God. So, let me read that again. Centering prayer, when it reaches the full consent to our nothingness. What does that mean? To our awareness, really, that we are being held together by the power of God. To our nothingness is a perfect preparation for death, because we're dying to that. We're dying to the false self. You know, one of the things that came up in the series that was interesting was Father Thomas said, what really dies? Good question. And he said, what really dies is your false self. The self that you've created, that is out of sync, if you would, with the true self. The creature that Christ, in a very special way, created in you and that you live by. Now we had another surprise. In the course of talking about this, after we did the videoing and so on, Susan Rush, who's a member of Contemplative Outreach and coordinator in New Mexico, is in hospice work. And one of the people she was journeying with, who was dying of cancer and had very little time left, was a man by the name of Thomas Vorse. He's a photographer, beautiful photographer in black and white images. She said, I would like you to see some of his photography. So she shared it with the team. It was beautiful, perfect. And so we asked permission of Thomas, could we use your photography in our series? He was thrilled. He was thrilled, and he was dying at the same time. And he knew that in a certain sense, what a wonderful way of allowing his work to continue in the context of what he's experiencing now in the hospice program. We are thrilled to be able to use his photography. He has died before the process of our project was over. And all we can say is, may he rest in peace. There's a lot of people to thank. We want to thank Father Thomas, for giving us the time, 4 days, 9 hours of videoing. We want to thank Ray Mueller, who is our videographer, who was there and is always a pleasure and a joy to work with. We want to thank our benefactors who gave us the financial support that was necessary for this series. And of course, I personally want to thank the team. Mary Ann Bess, Gail Fitzpatrick Hopler, and our special advisor in the whole project, Betty Sue Flowers. We are most thankful for all of them. I am personally so thankful for all of them. It was a pleasure, and will continue to be a pleasure, to be working with all of them. Now, when you're watching this series, please, in a certain sense, look upon it as a process. Look upon it as a way of seeing how you're thinking and how what you hear measures up to what you're thinking. Get in touch with your heart. Get in touch with what you're feeling about death and dying. And listen to what Thomas has to say and see how that will affect and influence your feelings. Look upon it in a very special way as death being just a moment in our lives. When I give talks at a worship service of commemorating the death of a person or at the actual funeral, I always like to tell the story about the fact our dear friend here, this is their second birth. And they all look at me as if something's wrong with me. I said, no, remember, look back now, because I love going back to the source of things. Our beloved who has died lived for 9 months in his or her womb, mother's womb. In living in that womb, that became a very comfortable experience. And all of a sudden, without permission, they were forced out of that comfort into a whole new world, which they were not familiar with. But with time, they came to love. Love the people, love the experience, love nature, love the whole wonderfulness of being in now the womb of the earth, from the womb of the mother to the womb of the earth. And at the moment of death, without their permission, they began to be forced out, if you would, of this particular womb to enter the womb of God. It's another birth. It's just a continuation of life. Death and dying, life and living. It's all about death. No, it's all about life. And death is only a moment. I invite you to truly enter into the experience of this series. And our wish and our prayer for each one of you is that it will affect you and touch you as deeply as it did I and the whole team. Blessings on you.